Note, this video entails spoilers for Arcane Season 1 and Season 2. So you've been warned. Don't cry. I've always loved creative entertainment.
What are you suggesting?
Spider-Verse, the Mitchells vs. the Machines, any media that became popular for artistic take on animation and storytelling.
We really have to send it to anarchy.
Have fun hurting the drunkards.
And all agree that it's peak, and it seems like we're getting it more and more every year. Loving this change of pace for entertainment, movies and series are becoming more creative with good animations and creative visuals.
You've no idea how beautiful it is.
And it seems like games are becoming more or less stale and more like format following.
I have one! I have one! There's no games! It's a Netflix box!
I mean, take COD for instance. It's just a pale shooter that gets re-released every year. I love capitalism. I love it.
We're bleeding money, and for what? His dreams of rebellion. He's losing control.
The only good game I can say is like Marvel Rivals. Of course it's a Overwatch ripoff, but still, it's peak. As said, I love this change of pace for entertainment, and the creative thinking is very like nice to see after years of like stale homework movies such as Marvel and DC.
You remember. Shut up and
Stop yapping.
I love how hypocritical I can be. I talk about how good a Marvel game is, and then I shit on its movies.
imprisonment. What a curious principle.
One obsession I got back in 2021 was Arcane.
You really are fond of him.
I love the series so much, I cried
Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting weapons.
when they announced that Season 2 was gonna get out in 2023 or 2024, I forgot. And now 3 years later, it's released and love it. Arcane being a series based on a game where most of its player base don't take showers, I actually got curious on how they could turn a mid-game into a masterpiece of a show. Sorry LOL players, but take that shower. If you have noticed me talking very slowly in that part, it's because I'm trying to not talk like this so I fuck up my word. As said, I actually got curious on how they could turn a mid-game into a masterpiece of a show, and eventually I decided to watch it.
Professor, I'm so glad you could make it.
Wouldn't miss it for the world, my boy.
Surprisingly, I was blown away. As a person who never played League, this series was something new and refreshing for me. I never saw one of the trailers or the announcement trailer because it was a stupid little teen who decided to get consciousness at the age of 14 instead of 4. I'm going off topic.
Certainly not.
As said, this show blows expectations out of the water, and for people like me who watched it blind, it didn't just blew me out of the water, it flew me to the stratosphere. Arcane is more than just a series with cool visuals and great music. It's a masterpiece that should be in a museum. Fortiche, yeah, I'm gonna ruin this. Fortiche and Riot Games deserve the praise they get. I mean, Arcane won 4 Primetime Emmy Awards, which supports my statement even further. Go watch Arcane. If Arcane was a book, it would be an instant classic for novelists and book nerds. Seeing that the writing is so good, it wouldn't have to change from being transferred to a series to a book form. Everything in Arcane has been perfected, from the animation to the sound design. It has been perfect. But that one thing that is most perfected of all in Arcane is the storytelling. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Third Law of Motion by Isaac Newton. By Isaac Newton. While this principle governs our universe, it also holds true to storytelling. A story cannot exist without structure, and structure cannot exist without the characters to drive it.
Ridiculous. You cannot be considered.
This is what I think Arcane gives into beautifully, using characters and the decisions to connect each other and create a narrative that transcends other media and both animated fiction. It's just peak. Everything from the characters in Arcane are perfected. Everything, I mean everything is perfected in Arcane. As said, it's supposed to be in a museum and not on Netflix for $10, I believe. But as said, the characters in Arcane are complex. They can be driven by something simple as saving a loved one, or to something a bit more complex.
I can't let you leave.
Terrorism, yeah! Characters shape the story in most media, but what makes Arcane truly exceptional, in my opinion, that it doesn't need characters to talk to tell the story.
I've already spoken to several potential investors.
Investors?
Of course. Everyone wants Hextech for themselves. It's your speech. Give the people a glimpse of the future.
This scene of Mel and Jace talking before cutting to Jinx and her weird-ass shenanigans is a great example of storytelling. As they discussed Hextech and the future, it of course cuts to a bomb, indicating a deep cut at what happens later in the story. Shit like that makes me hard, because that's good storytelling without using words. I don't like when series or movies like tells you what happens. Oh my god, somehow Palpatine returned. Arcane can talk to you without talking. It doesn't need someone to explain things you see every goddamn time. And writers and animators know that, which is why people love Arcane. It's written with passion and love, and it shows through the characters. Every character in Arcane has a role to play, from someone bringing in 2 children and adopting them, to some fucking Slavic twink becoming a little Jesus / magic god. Holy mother of God, I understand why so many thirst traps of him exist. Little twink god. Every decision matters. Fortesh and Riot Games didn't just make a show, they crafted an experience, and it shows in the care and time they put into it.
There is beauty in imperfections.
I believe the production process spanned nearly 7 years. 7 fucking years of painstaking detail, iteration, and passion. When something takes that long to create, it's no surprise it ends up being nothing short of peak. As a great man once said, you can't rush art. Speaking of art... Arcane's animation is peak, it's something else. I mean, compared to other media, it doesn't even compare. No, I rhyme compare with compare. Every frame is crafted with meticulous detail, like an oil painting in motion. In my opinion, Arcane doesn't just animate, it just levels it to another medium. Arcane knows how to do the big things and the small things together. That shows with every flicker of emotion to an explosive chaos of action scenes. Every moment feels intentional, and it makes story immersive and deeply artistic. And what makes Arcane this artistically impactful is not the visuals. Yeah, I mean, of course the visuals, but not the characters, not the storytelling, not even the animation. It's the use of color. Color theory on Arcane goes insane. It's a storytelling device. Color is a big part of Arcane's animation. 2 of our main protagonists and antagonists have blue and red hair coming from their mother's hair, which is purple. I don't know if it's a canon reason that her hair is purple, but doesn't it make more sense that the parent should have red and blue hair instead of one parent having purple hair? I mean, you don't get yellow and brown from a blonde person. Anyway, as said, color is a big part of Arcane. It's a great storytelling device that communicates emotions, themes, and relationships across story, and without needing to use a single word. Of course, it's a mainstream thing to use in storytelling and media of all kinds of sorts, gaming, movies, series, but Arcane does better. I don't know how to phrase. I mean, as an example, the contrast between red and blue that does not only reflect the tension between characters such as Vi and Jinx, but also symbolizes their opposing paths. I'm gonna state the obvious: red for Vi's fiery determination and blue for Jinx's freaky eye, melancholic chaos. I believe that's the right term. Melancholic. Purple. You mix the 2, red, the negative positive, and the blue, the positive negative. And you combine them, you get purple. Hollow. I said red for Vi's fiery determination and blue for Ying's melancholic chaos. Combining them both, what do you get? Purple, their mother's color, which becomes a reminder of the unity and bond they still crave. And shit like that makes me go hard.
Absolutely not.
Color theory and color use in animation and storytelling is fucking peak. That's why I love Spider-Verse. This is why I love Arcane. Despite how Arcane looks like a painting that you'd see in a museum, animation's fluidity and realistic movements from the characters, it blurs the lines between animation and reality. I mean, take a look at this scene for an example.
Yes, complaints about the Noxians. You could call it off? Okay, I'm better.
I do not know if it's the dark lighting or the simplicity of it, but it makes me feel like I'm watching a real life movie, like a dark romance movie.
Don't you have a cocktail party to attend?
It's so surreal how something so deliberately artistic can make you feel like you're watching something real. I believe it's the simplicity of the scene that makes it blur the line between her animation and reality. It doesn't need fancy moves, it's just simple. But that simplicity is why it looks so good. Of course, the animation is very fluid. Of course, the animation is very live, but it's still simple. It's a simple scene, and it makes me forget that I'm watching a painted masterpiece. Of course, it's not actually painted, it's a 3D animation, but I like to say it because Arcane is peak. That peak makes it feel alive. I mean, when I watched that scene with Maddie and Caitlin, I almost thought characters are gonna step out of frame. Speaking of frames, while Arcane plays at a standard 24 frames per second, Fortest Studios decided to use a variety? Can I talk? Can this brain go blah blah? No, it can't. Decided to use a variety of techniques to make it look far more smoother and more fluid. They added smears, common effect practice done to make animation look smoother without using motion blur. It also creates an illusion of faster movement by stretching and blurring the shapes. As said, a technique that's typical in high impact animation. Motion lines are often drawn over the 3D renders, mimicking the effect of motion blur and adding an extra layer of dynamicism to the action. And that's because it's a stylized choice which Forte Studio decided to add. Animation in Arcane is so important. That's why so many people like it. It's peak beyond peak. We'll never have something like Arcane again, and honestly, that's what makes it so special. Of course, you can argue that Spider-Verse and their movies can stand on its own as masterpieces, but Arcane does it better when it comes to storytelling and writing a atmosphere and a world that feels like it's been lived in. And as said, it's not just a show, it's a masterpiece. The kind of storytelling and animation we see here is just once in a lifetime thing. Something that makes you stop and appreciate how far animation has come as an art form is something that needs to be in a museum. Arcane set a bar that's unreal. We're not just fans of it, we're in awe of it. That feeling is never gonna fade away. This is why they're gonna make more series. Capitalism. Now you think that this would be the end of the video, but if you look at your timeline, I hope it's not, considering that script is like 2,000 words long, but it's not. We're not even halfway done, so prepare for more yapping.
Zorns degeneracy, whose conviction never wavers. A pillar of your community, whose house has always stood for progress. Who may consider my experience and my entire detachment of Noxian soldiers. Caitlin Kiraman. Your mother will have justice. I swear it.
What is the next step of the operation?
This scene, in my opinion, is peak Arcane. Not because of the stakes of what Caitlin has to do, leading an entire army of Noxus soldiers, but that the sound of leadership is a pounding fist to the heart, luring Caitlin in. Caitlin has doubts of her leadership skills and tries to drown out the pounding sound as she walks to Ambissa. Ambissa, peak woman, our lovely little war criminal, looking out at Piltover, staring at the consequences of her turning into a leader of Noxus army. Finally takes that one look, turning to the members of the room. Pounding still there, muffling but aching to be let out with a single. Caitlin accepts her role as commander of the Noxus army. Pound finally stops with her hands onto her chest. Holy fanfic paragraph. Anyway, back to the topic. Sound is as important as storytelling. Sound tells its own kind of story, and Arcane uses that to the extent with songs and sound effects. Every scene in Arcane uses sound, even the quiet scenes.
But I should have known better.
There's tons of examples of good sound design in Arcane, such as the things I showed you, farts. Those are the ones I can't and won't show, considering I will basically have to show the whole entire series, which makes this video like 12 to 15 hours long. That's not happening without me getting copyright strike. Good enough I can't lose money because I don't have any monetization to lose. I don't know how to say this, it's just Arcane has tons of examples of sound design. As I said, it helps with atmosphere and the tone of storytelling, which makes it enjoyable and totally Emmy-worthy. I still can't believe that this got adapted by a mid-game. Arcane being a faithful adaptation to the game is somehow inspiring.
Truly worked wonders.
As said, LoL is a bad game with good lore. Person who haven't read into the lore myself, something I will do and it's going on my bucket list. League's lore and how it ties to the series is very well done and interesting. Everything from Runeterra, Piltover and other region. And not to mention the lore with the characters and the avatars. I can honestly say that they did a good job at establishing both the game and the series without changing much. To note, I've only played League once and I've come to the decision that I will never touch that piece of shit like thing again. I value my body odor and I value healthiness as a person. LoL is just a bunch of sweats. Now that Arcane has made people play it more, it's become even worse.
There are no happy endings.
No, I'm not the best at video games, but having to know so many buzzwords such as jungling, insane, and other things is such an insane thing to have to. Never seen more terminology for a game. Since 6 Siege, you camp for 100 hours only to get headshotted by someone who has 1,000 hours in the game. Let's not forgive the sub-terms in LoL, it's insane. Imagine if LoL players put this much work into finding a job. They'd have it in an instant. League of Legends being such a worldwide popular thing, it has brought on over 150 million chronically active players, and that's fun to hear considering how much water that saves. Bad mouthing and jokes aside, LoL has a big player base because it's the old game. Official release being October 27, 2009. Being a mod for Warcraft 3 called Dota, the game into something else and basically became its sweaty game where everyone clicks and walks more, etc. I'm not gonna go into further detail on this game considering this is not about LoL, it's about Arcane, but that said, I'll begrudgingly admit that League deserves some kind of credit, not for the game itself, because God forbid I will never touch him, but for the sheer chaos it's unleashed on gaming culture. LoL is Pandora's box of online gaming. Inside it's just toxic chats and the meme culture behind it is valid considering how the player base behaves. What do you mean I can't ward the bush? The fuck does jungling mean? What do you mean mid, top, bottom? That? Jace, oh my god, I know him. Jinx, oh my god, favorite characters. Oh god, if you're a normal player just trying out League, you're gonna get bombarded by people just saying that your ass, your tactics are bad and you're either gonna get kicked or you're gonna rage quit considering how much you're dying. But if you think outside the box, we got Arcane, so it's a fair trade for a little toxicity. You get it. It's jing and jang. It's wild to think about a game that feels like a social experiment to see how fast people can mentally break. Has managed to foster one of the richest fictional worlds out there. I mean, if someone had told me years ago that LoL would be responsible for the greatest fictional show out there, I'd call you stupid and silly. LoL is toxic. Arcane is not toxic. But here we are, 2024. Arcane is an adaptation of a toxic game and no one's questioning it. The process of turning League into Arcane must have felt like turning a chess tournament into a blockbuster movie. Except the chess pieces are screaming fucking catchphrases while slinging shit. LoL isn't very known for its deep narrative structure. It's a team-based battle arena. Lore isn't as broad up as in Arcane with LoL. I mean, you get characters talking with each other, which brings out some kind of lore factoid, but it's just that a factoid. It doesn't bring out much. It's about as story-driven as a toaster manual. What the fuck is this GPT-ass response? Where the fuck do I write this? But as I said, Arcane is not a story game. It doesn't revolve around choosing adventure and explaining how the lore works. It's a click and point multiplayer game. Click and point and click, sorry. So when we write games and Fortesh teamed up to make Arcane, they had to build something emotional and narrative scaffolding pretty much anything from scratch. And somehow they perfected it. The first hurdle for them was translating gameplay into story. I mean, let's be real, smashing champions and clicking something is great for gameplay. It's a good mechanic, but not so great for television. Riot and Forte's decision, oh holy crap, I just swallowed there. Riot and Forte's decision to skip over this endless clicking simulator vibe was a good choice. I mean, of course you can make a story with gameplay, but having a deep dive into relationships and problems into the LoL universe is better than just Arcane being an action series without deep lore. Arcane chose the right decision not to adapt the game's frenetic pace and the focus on tactical skirmishes. Arcane slows down, focusing more on characters, the history, and underlying socio-political issues of Piltover and so on. Great nation of Swa. It also takes the game's already established factions and turns them into a nuanced, vibrant setting filled with intrigue and and conflict. Not only to glance at the surface, but also dig deeper into the lore and material. Unlike so many other adaptations of games to series that stumble by trying to shoehorn too much material, Arcane doesn't do that. It gets the heart of the LoL universe without having to put too much information on screen. The lore that League sets up isn't exactly novel. It's full of classic archetypes such as a noble city on the hill, that being built over, gritty undercity being sawn, and morally grey characters caught in the middle. Arcane succeeds being an adaptation to League by how it humanizes these factions and injects a layer of depth into them. Characters like Vi and Jinx aren't just avatars. They're fully realized people with emotional arcs, flawed relationships, and personal stakes. The show doesn't just give us fights for the sake of a spectacle. It ties them to the characters' growth and consequences of their choices. As said again, this is what separates Arcane from the countless other video game adaptations. By making Arcane strip away League's over-the-top competitiveness and leaning into the story, we get a series that delivers a story well enough for those who haven't picked up on the source material. By the choices Riot Games and Fortesh made by taking all the elements of LoL the players love, the lore and the world building became heavy with drama and crafted a narrative that works well enough to transcend the game itself, which results in a show that can stand on its own, making the case that video game adaptation doesn't need to be a cash grab. I love Arcane. You can tell I'm glazing the fuck out of Arcane. Yeah, I'm cooking with this narrative script. Holy shit. I said Arcane shows that it doesn't need to be a cash grab. There can be compelling character-driven stories that pull from the game's rich history while building something new. And honestly, it's a miracle that LoL became Arcane. It's something that I didn't know would happen, because I've always thought LoL as a boxy little game, but here we are with a animated series that capture everything fans love. But I'm still not playing LoL because I want to show her, man. Arcane as a whole is the closest thing to perfection since sliced bread, or Spider-Verse if you're uncultured. Great world building to its animation, it's all perfect in its own twisted way. Even from the small details such as Jinx being in the mirror when it's not, when Powder and Echo meets in the alternate reality, showing how tense he is, expecting this twisted version of her and not this caring one. As said, Fortish and Riot Games made this with love and passion. I am so excited to see how the next series will be. I'm seriously hoping that it's an Noxus, but I want to experience Runeterra from peak, not flying from a smurf. And even so, the most logical choice, considering how Noxus Force and Ambassador has been a big part of Arcane's story. I'm gonna guess, and we'll be expecting Arcane announcements, new series to be like in 5 years, considering how long it took. Anyway, I'm gonna go rewatch Arcane for the 5th time and cry for the 1,000,000th time again. I hope you enjoyed this shit of a video. It's been the longest video I've worked on and I'm very glad of it. I hope this script was for your liking, and I want some feedback considering this is a video essay and not a half-baked ass video I just talk about drama. I would appreciate that, and thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Love yourself. Subscribe. Love your family. Subscribe. Love your families. Subscribe. And bye-bye.
I did not have sexual relations with that man. I'm just kidding. I did. Possibly. Cat's out of the bag.